Greetings, folks, and hello again. You're okay. Welcome to the reading of A Journey. And I already did a chapter today, and told you then that I was hoping this is the chapter that precedes the one I just recorded earlier today. And I told you that I was hoping Carol would be willing to read this chapter, and yay, she is. This is Carol, by the way, if you have any if you've never met her, this is Carol.
Hello.
She's my lovely wife. And Carol, this is chapter 20. This is episode, now I forgot what episode it is, but that's okay. It's chapter 20. Carol tried to kill me. And so we'll just leave it to Carol from here out. Oh, if you can hear any music in the background, that's Wes Montgomery. Good stuff. All right.
So this is from Tim's perspective, so it's going to sound like I'm a guy when I'm actually a girl sometimes when I'm reading. We went, we saw, we had an unforgettable time, we came home. We were then able to decide together that although working with the program in Vietnam would have been a very worthwhile and valuable thing to do, it was not what we really and truly felt God was calling us to do as a family at that time in life. It's better to have a partner than go it alone. Share the work, share the wealth, and if one falls down, the other helps. But if there's no one to help, tough. Two in a bed warm each other. Alone, you shiver all night. By yourself, you're unprotected. With a friend, you can face the worst. Can you round up a third? A three-stranded rope isn't easily snapped. That's in the Message, Ecclesiastes 4:9 through 12. That's a scripture I had often heard growing up, and one that Carol and I asked to have read at our wedding. Nice words and a great concept about the benefits of two people going it together. A concept I never really understood, though, until I started sharing life with Carol. If I had been a single guy when an opportunity to work in Vietnam presented itself, there is just about no question that I would have jumped on it. As it turned out, I didn't have to make that decision alone, and when all was said and done, the decision that we made turned out to be for the best. Carol, that's me, is my wife, my partner, my very best friend, the mother of my children, and yes, I'll say it with all joy, my lover. Without question, and although married life is so much bigger than making love, I'd be lying if I didn't say that it really is one of the best parts. I have had to learn, though, that at least in my marriage, much like the wearing of spandex, physical intimacy is a privilege and not a right. Not too many months after I returned from Vietnam, while thoroughly enjoying an intimate and privileged moment with my dear wife, in my case, husband, I developed a horrible, and I do mean horrible, pain in my back. I was hoping that it was just a pulled or torn muscle of some kind, but as it continued to get worse, and as I started to turn pale and began sweating bullets, we had to conclude that maybe something else was going on. As a paramedic, I was aware of some of the nasty things that could possibly be the cause of what I was experiencing, but preferred to just keep thinking and hoping it was a torn muscle. I finally had to ask Carol to give me a ride to a nearby hospital. We gave our dear friend and neighbor Lori a call, and she came up to stay with the kids. Although I was a paramedic and a firm believer that people should always call 911 if experiencing an emergency, I personally would have never called for an ambulance unless I couldn't get to the car. I did make it out to our van, although had to kind of hang over the back seat during the ride in an effort to ease the pain. With Carol driving, we arrived at the emergency department and were able to get into a room pretty quickly. Shortly after telling the ER nurse that as a child I sometimes heard medical folks talking to my parents about a condition called Marfan syndrome, and as the back pain started to creep around into my chest, the ER doc decided to perform a CT scan. In a nutshell, Marfan syndrome is a genetic disorder that affects a person's connective tissue. People with Marfan's usually present with a few specific characteristics, which among other things include being tall and slender, sometimes double jointed, and having flat feet. These were all special gifts that I had been given. Whether or not I might have Marfan's was sometimes a topic of discussion while growing up. Probably the biggest and most nasty complication of the syndrome is the potential to develop an aortic aneurysm or dissection. Well, wouldn't you know it, when the good doctor returned with the results of my scan, his eyes were as big as, maybe even bigger than, the roach exterminator man's eyes in New Jersey. My ascending aorta, the big vessel that comes up out of the heart to deliver blood to the whole body, had a diameter of 6 centimeters. A normal ascending aorta for a guy my age would have been about 2.5 centimeters. That's an aneurysm. The layers of the descending aorta, that same vessel which makes a loop and then heads down to provide blood to all the organs and lower part of the body, had split apart on the inside. That's a dissection. Bummer. It wasn't long before they had me on a helicopter flying to the University of Washington Medical Center. After about a week in the hospital, followed by a few weeks of keeping my blood pressure really low at home to prevent either the aneurysm or dissection from getting worse, a remarkable surgeon and his team opened up my chest and gave me a new mechanical aortic heart valve and also wrapped the ascending aorta, I think with Dacron, to prevent it from rupturing. They chose to leave the descending aorta alone in the hope that by keeping my blood pressure really low, it would remain stable enough not to have to do further surgery. This would probably be a good place to mention that had Carol and I been in the process of making a move to Vietnam when this whole aortic thing happened, or perhaps even in Vietnam when the aneurysm and dissection occurred, our future would have undoubtedly been very different. I may not have even been around to write this now. Obviously, Carol didn't really try to kill me, but it's kind of fun to say that she did. Not to be morbid, and although it's a very selfish thought, if I were going to die, I can't think of a nicer way to go. Of course, I wouldn't ever want to put Carol through something like that. All the same, just saying.
All right. Well, many thanks to my dear wife Carol for reading with me. Maybe she'll do it again, I don't know. But
Bye.
All right.
Go now.
For now, adios.